You're on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third week of virtual Sunday school. We're really happy that you're all able to join us this week. We're going to be hearing the story of Noah and his ark and the flood. And I'll pass it over to you, Father Marshall, so we can listen to that story.
Hey guys, I'm excited for this. We were actually talking about this just before we started the recording. The flood story is actually in some ways older than the Bible. The story of the flood is found in several cultures, and one of the oldest stories that we know of in humanity. The Epic of Gilgamesh actually talks about a great flood, and a person like Noah, whose name I love it, is Utnapishtim. And many parallels are similar to that. So the flood is one that is with us and tells that deep story. Noah's story is unique to us in that it talks about how God decided to make a new start of the world and asked Noah to protect some of the animals that were on it, and then saved them, and then made a promise afterwards. So when I tell you the story, I want you to think about how you hear God being frustrated and how we get frustrated sometimes, how anger can sometimes lead to some destructive behavior, and then how we experience reconciliation with each other and how we promise to try to be better. Even God can do that sometimes. So here's the story of Noah. And I'm going to paraphrase because this is several chapters of Bible. I don't think you want to hear the whole thing today, but we'll paraphrase. So now, after Cain and Abel and their children and their children's children and their children's children's children went out into the world, people began to fill the earth. They multiplied over the face of it. And unfortunately, a lot of them made some bad choices. And something called evil in the world started to proliferate. I love that big word. It means there was a lot of it. And as this wickedness increased, God became more and more upset. And so God made a decision, as we sometimes do when things feel overwhelming for us. God made the decision to start over. And so the way that God resolved to do this was that God was going to bring a great flood over the earth and basically just start over. Like you'd erase a whole whiteboard so you can write it again. God was going to do that to the earth. But then God said, if I do that and there's no one or nothing left, how will I make a new beginning? So he looked around and he found a man who with his family and the people around him that he was close to was very righteous. And he said, this man Noah, I'm going to have save some of the animals on the earth, and I'm going to show him how to do it. Tells him to build an ark. And the ark that God asks Noah to make is made of gopher wood, which is a very hard wood, but very light. And this gopher wood that he had Noah make it of, had very specific measurements. These were measured in cubits. And I love this image because everybody wonders sometimes what a cubit is. So I'm actually going to share my screen so you can actually see what a cubit is. This is a cubit. And a cubit is the length that from someone's elbow to the tip of their middle finger. So Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Moffat Johnson, if you want to put up your arm, you can see that you have a cubit that's your own. But now if we were all sitting in the same room, our cubits would all be different lengths, wouldn't they? So this is the way it was. The person who was in charge of the project, this would be Noah, that would be the person who would define the cubit. So it was the length of his arm. So whenever they needed to measure a piece of wood, they'd come up to Noah and say, Dad, hold up your arm. And they'd measure that distance. Now in England, they talk about cubits a lot, and actually they've standardized it. And they say that a cubit is 18 inches, but not every cubit's the same cubit. So they build this ark, and God says, now you've built this ark. I want you to go out and I want you to get 7 pairs of every clean animal and 1 pair of every unclean animal. Now, this is an interesting statement because up until now, we haven't really heard about clean and unclean. And we'll hear about that later when the people of Israel get the law from God in Sinai with Moses, where they are told how they're to eat and what they're to eat and what kinds of food. But for now, there were different pairs of animals. Some were considered clean and some were considered unclean. For instance, a catfish would be unclean because it has a skin and not scales. Whereas a A trout, or I'm sorry, or a bass would have scales and you could eat that. Or for instance, you can't eat a pig because it doesn't chew the cud, but you can eat a cow. So those are the differences between clean and unclean. All of those go into the ark. It starts to rain, and it rains for 40 days. Now, sometimes we get long rainstorms around here, don't we? But they don't last 40 days. But this lasted for a long time. And eventually the waters rose, and they rose, and they rose. And eventually the whole face of the earth was covered, and not a single thing on the earth or in the air or under the water survived. The only thing that survived were the animals and Noah's family in the ark. And God remembered Noah and the animals, and he sent a wind to move the ark and to take it to a safer place and to guide it as it floated across the face of the deep. After a time, when the rain had stopped, Noah uncovered the ark. He lifted the cover off of it. They'd been inside this whole time, lifted the cover off it, and released a raven. But the raven just went up and circled around and saw nothing. There was no land. And then he sent a dove, and the dove did the same thing, and it came back. And then eventually he sent another dove, and that dove never came back. And finally he sent the third dove, and that dove came back with an olive branch in its mouth. And that's when they knew that it was okay for them to start to look for a place. And eventually God brought the ark to a place where there was land. And that's where they made their landfall. And then God opened the doors of the ark, and Noah brought all the animals out. And the very first thing that Noah did was that he built an altar to God and made a sacrifice on it. And that was when God said, I am going to make a covenant with you. And I will show this as a sign of promise that I will take my bow, like bows and arrows, only God's bow is much bigger than ours would be. God takes a bow, his bow, and he takes that and he lays it up in the heavens. And it's a beautiful long arc of many colors. He says, every time it rains, when you see one of those, you'll know that this is not another flood like the one I did. In fact, I promise you, I will never destroy ever again that way. And God has been faithful to this day. So when you're driving down the road and you see a rainstorm in the distance, and then you see sometimes a whole rainbow, or maybe even a double, or once I even saw a triple rainbow. You know that God's promise is this beautiful Hebrew word. God's promise is steadfast. In Hebrew, that's chesed. God is steadfast, always faithful, always faithful. And that's the story of Noah and the ark and the rainbow.
Thank you, Father Marshall. That's such a great story. And what it makes me think of is the story of the ark, and the ark as a place of safety, of refuge, is just our world today, and how we all need that place of safety and refuge when so much around us is uncertain. And we all have that certain place of safety and refuge that we look to. But we also always look for that rainbow, that promise of hope, right, as well. What's that for you, Father Marshall? What's your ark?
My ark and my rainbow. Well, I'll tell you, my ark has been different through the summer, through the spring and summer and fall. So for a long time, my ark is where I'm sitting right now. It's my office in my house, where I get to have my camera and I get to lead services for people and talk to them, where I did a lot of my working and my praying and my thinking. So a long time, where I am right now was my ark. When the weather was really nice, though, I would go right outside there and sit on the patio. And that warm space for my wife, Laura, and I was another place that we found safety and refuge, and a sense of feeling kind of protected in a chaotic time. And now that it's getting cold outside, it's actually our living room. We have a little fireplace that's electric. It's not, it's not wood burning, but it has little flames. And the cats come and sit with us, and we can have tea or coffee, and that's our sort of our place of refuge. But the rainbow, for me, really, the rainbow has been here at St. Peter's as we've resumed our community supper on Wednesday nights, which I just came from. We served 120 meals tonight. It's the faces of people as we're serving them and giving them meals and checking in with them and making sure they're okay. It's the people we're serving at the food pantry and connecting with the volunteers as they come back too. It's the joy The rainbow for me is the joy of service and being able to participate in that and check it. That's been mine. How about you? What are yours, Christina?
Mine, I think is a little similar to yours. My ark, my place of safety and refuge for me, and I think for my family too, has been our backyard. Because inside the house, I think sometimes we feel like things are closing in on us. There's a lot of people in a small space, and so to have the backyard, still a safe place, but a place where we could be a little bit more free, has been our refuge through this time. And so, even as it gets colder, I think, putting on jackets and still being able to sit in the backyard and, look at the birds and watch the chipmunks and things like that. Just having that connection to the outside is our arc. And our rainbow, for me, it still is my connections with people. If having a socially distanced visit with a friend or with extended family members, that's still what keeps me going. Or even a video call with somebody I haven't seen in a long time, but this has prompted us to say, hey, now we can have that. We should have that meeting. Why haven't we done this before? And so to see faces I haven't seen in a long time this way. So yeah, that's been my rainbow. How about you, Mrs. Brown? What's your arc and your rainbow?
Well, first of all, I have to say the Noah's Ark story is near and dear to my heart. I named my youngest son Noah because I love the name so much. I would say my arc through this time has been my home. It's the place where we've all been together, where we can kind of feel safe. I've been able to teach my students as a teacher's aide and help the teacher that I work with from home. My kids have been learning from home. But on top of that, we've been able to spend time together. And actually, that's my rainbow, would be just having this time that maybe I wouldn't have had otherwise, to spend with my husband and my boys, and to do some fun things that maybe we wouldn't have done before. We've made homemade pasta, we've made homemade bread, we've watched movies, we've just done these things that maybe we wouldn't have had the chance to do before, until this happened. So that's my rainbow.
I love, yeah. I love the pictures of your homemade pasta, by the way.
Thank you. That was a fun night for sure.
And so, Mrs. Brown, you have a craft for us to do as well?
I do. I actually have two fun things for us to do tonight. So the first is actually a snack. It's a Noah's Ark banana boat. So what you can do is you take a banana, and my suggestion would be to cut a little off the bottom just to make it a little stable, right? So I cut the bottom off, and then put a little peanut butter to stick it to your plate so that you can fill it with your animals. Now, when you fill it with your animals, you can use whatever you have in your house or whatever is good for your family. My family, we always have giant jars of peanut butter. We go through peanut butter like crazy here in the Brown house. I put a little peanut butter on the bottom of my banana to stick it to my plate so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. And then I'm going to put some peanut butter on the top of the banana. But you can use whatever you have. If you use almond butter or sun butter, whatever your family uses in your house, you can just put that on the top of your banana boat. And then we're going to stick our animal crackers on the top. Right? You can do 2 by 2. You can do whatever your favorite animals are, but put them all on their little banana boat. And then you have a fun little snack.
That's great. We're doing this tomorrow, and I'm going to
That's a fun, healthy snack too.
I love it.
And then I have another craft that we can do, because we know that God sent the rainbow as his sign that he would, as his promise that he would never flood the earth again. So I have this printable, and we'll make sure that we put the link below that says, God is faithful. He keeps his promises. And you can color the word faithful. And then all you need are some construction paper strips in the colors of a rainbow. And then you just use your glue stick, and you can glue them all to the bottom. Use some crayons to color. Maybe if you want to put some cotton balls on the cloud to make it look like a cloud. And then I put a little hole in the top, and you can put a little string through and tie it. And then you can hang this either on your front door or in your window, just as a little reminder to keep a little rainbow going in your life, to say that, you know, this is God's promise to us that things are going to be okay.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Brown. I'm so excited to do those. Definitely tomorrow. I know what our snack is going to be.
Good.
Got some bananas to use up.
That's all.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us for our Sunday school lesson of the week. And we're looking forward to seeing you all next week for is it our final October story, or we have
It
one?
is our final October story. Yeah.
Final October story. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what our plan is for November.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
You both. Bye-bye.